Even though you've already seen me bring EF Core's SQL Server provider into this project, my DB context is still completely unaware of that provider. If you're coming straight from EF6 or earlier, informing the context about the provider and connection string is quite different, so do pay attention. There's more magic in those earlier versions to infer the provider and connection string, but this caused some confusion and some bad side effects. With EF Core, you need to explicitly tell the context what data provider to use and explicitly give it a connection string. There are a few ways to do this. One is directly in the DB context class, and that's what I'll do here. Now, hard-coding the connection string into the context is great for demos and first looks, but not for your real software. Later, you'll see me take advantage of some features of ASP.NET Core to inject this information into a DB context at runtime. In EF Core, the DB context has a virtual method called onConfiguring. I'll add that into my class using the override snippet. OnConfiguring will get called internally by EF Core as it's working out what goes in the model. And it will also pass in an options builder object, and you can use that options builder to configure options for the DB context. We won't need this base onConfiguring call, so I'll delete that. Notice that the options builder has a method called useSQLServer. That's an extension method, and it's available because I've got a reference to the Microsoft Entity Framework Core's SQL Server API. If I had pulled in the SQLite provider, I'd have access to a method called useSQLite. And if I had referenced SQLCE, I'd have useSQLCE as an option, and so on with the other providers. So I'll choose the useSQLServer method, which expects a parameter that's the connection string. And this is how, in a single statement, I can tell the DB context, hey, you're going to be working with SQL Server, and here's the connection string to the database that I want you to use. And that points to the local DB SQL Server instance and specifies that the database is called pub database. Now, in my case, the database doesn't exist yet, but there are a number of ways to let EF Core help you create a database. And that's possible because EF Core is able to read the model that this DB context describes based on the classes that it's pointing to. And it can do it on the fly at runtime, or you can explicitly do this at design time. And you even have the option of letting it create the database directly or just having it create SQL scripts. The first time EF Core instantiates the pub context at runtime, it will trigger the onConfiguring method, learn that it should be using the SQL Server provider, and at the same time be aware of the connection string. So that way, it will be able to find the database and do its work.